Covenant Academy, bringing your nourishing nugget at noon. Hey, good to be with you. Today we're in episode 17. We're going to be talking about the ministry of the Spirit. Now, we've been talking about, let me give you the last few rundowns. We were talking about how the Spirit dwells in you, how we're now saints. We're in the Spirit. We're not in the flesh. That was episode 15. And that we belong to him. And that really summarized our Romans chapter 8, verse 9 passage. And so as we get into this ministry of the Spirit, notice if you're in Hebrews chapter 8, and today we'll actually be in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. But in Hebrews chapter 8, what we see is that, the law is being referred to as glorious. And we see that Israel was being led by the hand. Now, if you think about that, that would be such a glorious thing to be led by the hand. And so there was that time there, what God actually has already brought Moses into the scene. And he's speaking face to face and mouth to mouth with Moses. And he brings Israel to the Mount Sinai there. And Israel sees all that God is on that mountain. And they're scared. They don't really want a face to face and mouth to mouth relationship with God. In fact, they even say this. This is Exodus 19:8. It says, all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And so think about that. The law comes down because they had already said, we don't want, give us a mediator, or give us someone in the middle. And so this is why the law and the prophets get set up. Again, Israel doesn't want the face-to-face and mouth-to-mouth relationship with God. And so God chooses the most humble man on earth, Moses. That's like Numbers 19, verses 1 through 6. And so he brings down the law and the prophets, and they say that. They're like, just give us it, right? Give us the law, and we will do it. And of course, what we find in Hebrews 8, I think it's around verse 8, well, God found fault with the people. They couldn't live up to the law. What did the law essentially become? Well, they were thinking it would make them perfect and complete. They were thinking it would bring life. They believed that it would bring all the blessings of God. Well, it would bring essentially blessings if you want to look at it as material type things. There would be a blessing. There was going to be a promised land that would flow with milk and honey. It was all like a type and a shadow, of course. But there was a problem in that covenant. God was on one side of the covenant and Israel was on the other. What did Israel discover? Well, they had the heart of stone, and God would always find fault with them because they wanted a covenant that was conditional. They said, you give us the law, we'll keep it, we'll do it. Well, God gives them that law, and what does Israel find after thousands of years? Like Peter says in Acts 15:10, he says, why are we putting upon the yoke of the Gentiles' disciples something that neither we nor our forefathers have been able to keep? See, they couldn't keep it. It didn't make them perfect and complete. It didn't bring them life. As you look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3, the law is the ministry of death and condemnation. The law is a tutor, a guardian. It's there to guide you and to show you that you can never be perfect or complete or experience life through the law. It's going to weigh you. It's going to judge you. It's going to leave you found wanting. And so that's really the picture there. So, a lot of times when I talk about the difference of the law, which is glorious, it is glorious, see, versus the new covenant reality, well, that law, the ministry of the Spirit is actually in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 is more glorious. And so I always like to use the example of maybe a little girl who's playing with a doll and you want to get the doll away from her. Well, what's the best way to get her away from that doll? Well, you give her a baby, right? See, that doll, all she's doing is mimicking what it would be like to play with a real person. Does she really just want to just play with a fake person? No, she wants connection, right? That's what she wants. So you got a little boy. There he is playing with this truck. And I could sit down and play with cars all day long. But what did I want? I wanted to connect. So how do you get that little car away from me? Well, you give me a puppy dog. That's what you do. You give me a puppy dog. And then I find out that I can lick the puppy and the puppy can lick me, right? And so maybe it's not a puppy, maybe it's a bike. Instead of there you are playing around with your little car on the ground. It's like, get a bike. And now the kid gets out onto his bike and now he starts to use his bike to go connect with his other friends, right? Well, as we're in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, we see again this picture. Paul is talking about the ministry of the law, again, the ministry of death and condemnation versus the ministry of the Spirit. Now, here we are in verse 3. It says, you are a letter of Christ. You're cared for by us, not written with ink, but with the Spirit of God, not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of the human heart. Now, here really we see this second promise and provision of Jesus' new covenant, where we're going to get this heart of stone removed, get the heart of flesh, and on that heart of flesh, that new creation heart, he's going to write his laws to believe and to love on our heart, and then he's also going to etch them and put them into our minds. And so here we are. Prior, what was the Spirit of God doing? He was using his finger, and he wrote the law. And now what do we see? Well, the Spirit comes in and he writes spiritually on our heart and on our spirit. He writes the Spirit of the living God. He writes his laws to believe and to love. So no longer on the tablets of the human heart or on tablets of stone, but literally on that tablet of the human heart. And so he says confidence. We have such confidence we have through Christ towards God. See, Christ is the mediator there. It comes through Christ that then towards God. That's what connects you to God. Jesus is that throne of mercy and grace. He's that satisfaction. He's the Holy One that comes to step in man's place. There's one mediator between God and man, and it's Jesus, and he did that for us. Or he says, we are not adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves. No, our adequacy is from God. And so we've been made adequate, guys, as a servant of the new covenant. And that's not because we're following every jot and tittle of the law. No, in fact, if you go to our Ezekiel 11, verses 19 and 20, or go to Ezekiel 36, verses 25 through 27, when you see about this whole heart of stone that's going to be removed and you get a heart of flesh, there's a walk, a keep and a do. There's an obey that happens. And so this is really, to me, one of the most exciting things about what happens is, see, prior, you and I, excluded from the life of God, we didn't have the heart or the spirit to fully know him in spirit and truth, to know him as the way, the truth, and the life, to know him as that new and living way. We couldn't really commune or walk in fellowship in unity of faith with him because we had the wretched heart. We had that heart of stone. So it's been removed, and now we've been made adequate because we've been now given the Spirit of his Son. That's back to session, I think it was 14 or 15. And so, yeah, we're not in the flesh. We're not under the law. We're in the Spirit. And so now, as it relates to you and I, we're now servants of this new covenant. We're not of the letter of the law. Remember, they had to actually, to get all the blessing, had to follow every jot and tittle, every letter of the law. So, ones that are trying to earn righteousness, their righteousness has to exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees. Well, our righteousness is from Jesus. He's the holy, innocent, pure, undefiled, separated from sinners, exalted above the heavens kind of sacrifice. That's our Hebrews 7, verse 26. So we're holy and blameless, made righteous, consisting of his goodness, righteousness, and truth because of the blood of Jesus. And so we don't have the ministry of death that was engraved on stones. It came with glory, but no, we're now ministries of the Spirit. And so the ministry of the Spirit comes even more with glory. So we've been created now in righteousness and holiness of the truth. That's our Ephesians 4:24 passage. And now as you and I live in, by, and through the Spirit, the ministry of the Spirit is the ministry of righteousness, the ministry of right living that now continues to live through us. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Mark with Jesus' New Covenant. Thanks for joining me on this Nourishing Nugget at noon. Have a great day.